What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to, once again, I think for the third video in a row, another news roundup video. And I was just going to talk about one or two stories initially, but I've managed to collect together quite a bit of news, quite a few stories that I think you guys will find just as interesting as I do. And today, we need to start off with Clayface. We have brand new info on the casting, and I'm not gonna lie, this has me quite excited because it's making things that much more tangible. Now, initially, I wasn't going to speak about this because the source came from My Time to Shine Hello on Twitter. Some of you may be familiar with that account. However, we've had Apocalyptic Horseman from Nexus Point News, a very reputable scooper for the DC Studios side of things, back this up. So this is apparently real, and auditions are taking place, and we have a few actors in particular who are screen testing for the role of Clayface in the DCU. Oh, one more thing as well, we're about to dive into Mike Flanagan talking about Clayface. So there's quite a bit of news to dive into here. So the first person up for test screening is George McKay. Then we have Tom Blythe, Jack O'Connell, and Leo Woodhull. So I do want to say that I agree with people saying, kind of like one of the top comments here, literally any of these would be a win. I think they're all really good actors, but I think after seeing Sinners recently, I just feel like, again, if I put my casting director hat on, I feel like Jack O'Connell gives me that Clayface vibe in the DCU. Sure, all of these guys are actors, they're great actors at that, but Jack O'Connell, I don't know, I feel like he can, just seeing him in Sinners playing that role in particular, I can imagine him transforming into Clayface so well. But then George McKay is really interesting, Leo Woodhull is really bursting through the scene more than ever. I think they're all very capable, but let me know what you guys think there. I mean, I could ramble and ramble and ramble about this, but for me, I think Jack O'Connell should get it. Now, carrying on the Clayface route here, we've got a new interview with Mike Flanagan with comicbook.com while he was promoting his new film, The Life of Chuck, and they ask him about Clayface, what inspired it, and he just talks about, what's going on with the script, because again, we heard a little while back that Jeff Snyder was claiming it's literally a page one rewrite, but we had Apocalyptic Horseman saying, look, I'll take the L if I'm wrong, but I heard it was more a director's pass, and we never really learned the truth of the matter, and I think maybe this gives us a little bit more insight into what was going on with the Clayface script. So when being asked if his script was inspired by Batman the Animated Series, Mike Flanagan says, of course it was. I mean, that is the perfect story. Feet of Clay, Ron Perlman, to me, that's it. That two-parter knocked me out. The short answer is that is absolutely what inspired my script. That is the world I wanted to live in. Batman the Animated Series, when I was growing up, was my Batman. As much as Michael Keaton was my Batman, the animated series really was my Batman. Now, that is really interesting, and you guys know what I always say here, though. Adaptations don't copy and paste, so when Mike Flanagan says, was that inspiring my script? Absolutely. The Feet of Clay in Batman the Animated Series. So that doesn't guarantee that this Clayface in the DCU is going to be Matt Hagen, as it was in Batman the Animated Series Feet of Clay. Maybe it is, but there's other aspects to that plot where, of course, he gets hooked onto Renew, and essentially this ends up in like murdering spree. It's like this big, kind of as Flanagan, as per what he said a while ago, you see the inspirations of the horror thriller, but yet also tragedy. The big clusterfuck of a mess that happens to Matt Hagen, and that's how Batman gets involved because he's investigating the murders. I wonder if the approach and execution to the storytelling could be done in a similar way, and where Clayface remembers back to how Matt Hagen himself, became disfigured, like in that car accident, which obviously got him on to Renew in the first place. Now, when it comes to the script, Mike Flanagan then says, I don't know what they're doing with Clayface. I'm not directing it, and that filmmaker will need to make it their own, he said. I know that they're doing work on the script. I'm off doing other things now. I really hope it remains true to the spirit of what I wanted it to be, but It's not my movie, so I'll be in the audience with you, anxious to see how it turns out. So I think that gives more credit to what Apocalyptic Horseman was originally saying. Apocalyptic Horseman was claiming that he had heard that it's more of a director's pass, where, as I said, they kind of shift it around, do some work on the script, as literally Mike Flanagan said. Here, I'm not directing it, and that filmmaker will need to make it their own. This filmmaker who is directing Clayface will, quite literally, need to, like, fit it in with the vision they have for directing it, right? Plus, who knows, behind the scenes, maybe they want to incorporate some other things into the script that aligns with their DCU, but that doesn't mean they didn't love the backbone of what Mike Flanagan provided them with in terms of this story. I do wholeheartedly agree, though, with what Mike Flanagan said in terms of, I hope it remains true to the spirit of what I wanted it to be. I don't want to be negative about it. I'm sure that they are just doing like a little bit of retooling in terms of what the director wants it to be, but using Mike Flanagan's baseline as a thorough through line of the movie still. But I guess only time will tell. But expect some kind of updates on this fairly soon. Now up next, guys, over the weekend, we got a Peacemaker Season 2 Hype Sizzle, as the DC channel is calling it, which was really, really cool because we had James Gunn and John Cena over at CCXP. So right at the beginning, we literally hear Frank Grillo saying, you know what we're doing here? I'm stomping on John Cena's face. So this is obviously at the point in Peacemaker Season 2 where Rick Flag Sr.'s finally got his hands on his son's killer. And I like the shot that they have here. It must be done deliberately and poetically to mirror what position Peacemaker was in the Suicide Squad, where he had Rick Flag Sr.'s son, on top of him, and he grabbed that little shard, and then obviously he stabbed him and killed him. Now here, we have Rick Flag Sr. on top of him, and it makes me wonder, this is probably a bit of a whimsy kind of theory, but if there was something that we could have Peacemaker reach out to here again, that could stab Rick Flag Sr., but maybe he chooses not to. But I've also got a theory that whatever the bigger plot is this season will force maybe Rick Flag Sr. and Peacemaker to reconcile. Not let bygones be bygones, because that is too much of a big thing to move past for Rick Flag Sr., I'm sure. But I can't imagine the whole season is about Rick Flag Sr. trying to hunt down Peacemaker. As we see here, Peacemaker is wearing that shirt as he's sitting on this bike here, which I believe is the other Peacemaker's bike. More on that in a second. With that mural appearing in the background, and you guys may remember that from set photos, but it was getting taken down from Warner Brothers at the time, but now it's in this video. You can't really truly make it out, but essentially you have White Dragon in the middle, but the Blue Dragon Otherworld variant of it. You have the other Peacemaker in his new suit on the mural, and you have that other mystery character, which everyone is theorizing to be in this other world. His brother didn't die when he was younger, so he grew up to also wear and be a superhero in that kind of outfit as well, which we do see him a little bit later on, but I keep getting ahead of myself. So the reason why I bring this up is because this is probably taking place in that other world, because that mural's there in the background. So Peacemaker's gone through the quantum unfolding chamber, through that kind of Monsters Inc. door, and he's in that other world. That's why there's this mural in this town. Because another thing I want to mention is that it is a literal other world. It's not a clone. Some people have said that with regards to this other Peacemaker. We literally have James Gunn saying at CCXP Mexico, we see a couple of them, as in these other characters, in different ways in Season 2. There's another little world Peacemaker goes to. That is why you have like White Dragon in like a blue version of the costume here. I think in this other world, clearly, especially from the stuff in the background that we saw during the teaser trailer, Peacemaker, his father, and his brother who didn't pass away have become this superhero force. And I know now the new consensus is that this new world isn't the DCU that Peacemaker just moves into when the season is all said and done. It's probably the case that when the season picks up, Peacemaker's already in the DCU because, as James Gunn also confirmed at CCXP, Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, and Sean Gunn's Maxwell Lord, that interview is in episode 1. And that means, like, they're in the DCU there. It's just that Peacemaker already in the DCU in Peacemaker Season 2 goes to another kind of world, which is where these other characters like the other Peacemaker and so on and so forth come from. But that still doesn't answer the apparent addressing of the universe change that we're going to get as to how Peacemaker got into the DCU in the first place, because apparently the show is still going to address that. Some people are saying that this symbol on his bike could be the other world's version of an Argus logo. Maybe it doesn't look exactly like the Argus logo we're familiar with, but there are some Argus logos out there that do have that like inner triangle and then the outer arrow over it. So you never know that in this other world, Peacemaker, his dad, and his brother, all grown up, could be like working on behalf of Argus, but I feel like there's something slightly fishy to them. I do think it's really cool how the Peacemaker suit, as revealed in different angles in this sizzle, has a jetpack on it. That would explain how we see this other character who, again, I'm pretty damn sure it is Peacemaker's brother, who in this other world didn't die. He has a jetpack, and we see him fly through a freaking chopper that explodes. But it's gonna be pretty wild to see our version of Peacemaker put on this suit and experiment with these new gadgets like a jetpack. That's pretty awesome. Like, I'm imagining scenes of our Peacemaker flying with Eagly because now he's got a jetpack in the sky. Not to mention he's got like a little hidden blade in his like wrist gauntlet, hand gauntlet thing, which is pretty awesome. Now, as for this freaking bug creature here, I don't know what or who. I've seen some people say, is this like another white Martian, just like the theory of that kind of white Martian looking thing in the Superman behind the scenes reel that we got, even though they are different here. I don't know. Now, another interesting face we see in this sizzle reel is Otis. And he, of course, is in the Superman movie, one of Lex Luthor's kind of henchmen, if you will. So, you know, we've heard from James Gunn that there's going to be a really big cameo towards the end of season 2. And some are wondering if the fact that we see Otis in this hype sizzle trailer could mean that, well, if Otis is here for whatever reason, right, then maybe that cameo is indeed Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor, which could be the case. I mean, I did entertain in a previous video that they were filming this around the same time as Superman, which is why it was easy to probably get, you know, Hawkgirl and Guy Gardner, Isabella Merced and Nathan Fillion in it. So they could have easily been like, hey, Nicholas Holt, can you kind of come in and film this like 3-minute scene for Peacemaker towards the end of season 2? I think Otis here is probably a link to whatever happens later on with this larger cameo towards the end of season 2, which could very well be Lex Luthor. But back to Peacemaker and his family. I can't wait for... I think this scene here could very well be a showdown between our Peacemaker, but yet his other world's still alive White Dragon and brother, and that's going to be really conflicting for him going up against Keith, and I think that's going to be nuts. We also see Harcourt and Peacemaker like flying out of this window here, and this is an Argus building, probably in the other world, and they smash into this car here. So I don't know if this is Harcourt fighting the other Peacemaker, or if it's just our Peacemaker wearing the other suit and they both escape out of the building, but because our Peacemaker isn't familiar with how to use the jetpack so elegantly, they kind of smash into the car. I can easily see something like that happening as well. But I would say that whole sizzle reel looks really awesome. Season 2 looks like a bunch of fun. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of exciting things that will be happening. Otis is in it. Like, what DCU connections could we get? So cannot wait. Absolutely cannot wait. And make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any season 2 updates. But let me know any theories you have with just Peacemaker season 2 in general. So up next, in the realms of Superman, we've had some very interesting news recently, I guess you could say, with regards to Superman's budget and box office. So from the wrap here, with a $225 million budget, Superman needs to cross the $700 million threshold at the global box office to be considered a success, according to a top talent agent who spoke to the wrap, but wished to remain anonymous. But as the Wrap article continues, they say the studio itself seems confident. According to one insider, if Superman grosses anything north of $500 million worldwide, the film will turn a profit at the box office, not inclusive of ancillary revenues. In the court of public opinion, however, it will need to gross closer to $700 million to be considered a hit. So I do want to stress that right now there is no like actual firm tracking. This is all just like guesstimations as per a lot of box office projections anyway. I've always said, and you know, taking into account what is being said over the past few days here with the budget and the box office projections, as everyone's calling it, is that I think Superman is never going to make as much money as it maybe deserves to make, hypothetically. Let's just say the movie is really good. Really, 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 really good. Kind of like how Thunderbolts, actually, I thought was a good movie, and I don't think that's made, well, we know it hasn't made as much in the box office as I think it deserves. Warner Brothers, DC, has so much goodwill, so much trust they need to get back through actually producing good product, to the point of where I think there will be people who don't even turn up in the first place. So I think Superman, I've always said, if it makes in the ballpark of 680 million to, you know, near the Batman 770 million, that would be a huge W for me. Now, some people, you watching right now, have said like, oh yeah, Superman's going to make over $1 billion. Absolutely over $1 billion, 900 million at least. I just don't feel confident in that. And I'm not saying that it doesn't have that capability. Of course, it's not impossible that it makes a lot of money. But do I feel confident about that? Not exactly. Now, will Superman flop if it doesn't make 900 million? No, of course it won't. Some people will say that, oh, if it was so good, it should have made this much money. No, that's why I keep saying, if it makes near to the Batman's level of box office, that would be amazing. It really, really would. That isn't bad at all. Of course, Warner Brothers and DC Studios are hoping for more, if they can get more, but I think they would be foolish, incredibly foolish to think that this movie will make as much money as they would like it to, just based on the brand perception and recovery and goodwill that they need to earn back. And what I mean by that is, obviously, the last DCEU movies, like multiple DCEU movies, struggled to break past $400 million in the box office because people just weren't even turning up. They just like, okay, cool, like there's that movie. Okay, I'm not going to turn up to it though. So we'll make more than the final DCEU movies. I'm very confident about that. But the push it needs to get to that level of, okay, we're starting to see a bit of like a little bit more interest. But I still insist that the DCU needs to make a couple of good projects that may not have had everyone go to see it in theaters, to the point of where after, let's just say, Superman's released, Supergirl's released, Lanterns was received well on HBO, you have those people who didn't go say like, oh, damn, I kind of missed out on that. Like, everyone said it was really good. I saw it on streaming afterwards. I thought it was really good. I'm going to go see the next one in theaters. Unfortunately, that's what I think brand damage does to some people. But if you keep producing good content after good content, good movie after good movie, those people who just didn't bother, they will come into the next one. Sure, you're going to have an influx of people initially watching Superman because it's Superman, they're curious about it, a new DCU, all of that stuff, right? But you will have some people who just won't bother. And that's why I say I think this movie, let's just say hypothetically, it's a really good movie that James Gunn has made. It's as popular as, in theory, to people who do go and see it as the Guardians of the Galaxy movies were. You're still going to get some people who just don't bother. That would take some time in projects releasing to recover that goodwill, right? The DC brand lost that for some people. But that's why I go back to saying originally, Superman, they are lucky that they're launched, but they're not lucky. It was probably a decision, right? Superman is the first project that they're releasing, and Superman is a big name. Now, that's not always saved it in the box office before because, you know, Man of Steel didn't make as much money as they wanted it to make back in the day. But they do have one foot forward with the Superman name. They have some disadvantages and challenges with what I've just mentioned. That's why my expectations, if I'm going to set any for myself, is the 680-ish, let's just say 650 mil to 750 mil is where I would put it. By the way, I want to say, and I want to stress, it should do better than that. It should do. But I'm kind of putting it back at 650 to 750. Anything above that, 773 was the Batman. Anything above that would be like home run for me. And that would be incredibly awesome for not just this movie, but the trajectory for the DCU moving forward. But I don't think if it made 650 or 730 or 750, that would be like, oh, I don't know about the DCU, man. Oh my God, no. That's just like, okay, that was a W still in my books. They're recovering brand loyalty. People who still saw it after the theaters, let's just say they really liked Superman, they might be thinking, you know what? I really like that. I'm going to go see Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow in the theaters next year because I skipped Superman and I saw it eventually, and oh, that was actually good. That kind of thing. I'm not saying I'm on the ball there, but I think psychoanalyzing the whole just kind of perception of DC, and like Marvel's going through their own hurdle right now as well. Because of certain mediocrity in certain movies, it's dwindled interest. People don't want to turn up to a project that was actually genuinely good, like Thunderbolts, because it doesn't have Tony Stark and Steve Rogers in it, And because of other mediocrity that they've gotten out of other projects, they're like, oh, I don't care about seeing, okay, you got Florence Pugh in it, but I don't care about Yelena or US Agent compared to like Steve Rogers, so I'm probably going to skip this one. But the sad reality of that is because of brand, perception, they have the audience, a lot of the audience skipped out on one of the best like MCU movies I've seen since, well, I suppose Guardians 3. So do you see what I mean? This is, I think that whole, if you psychoanalytically speak about all of this and observe all of this, that is what the MCU as well as the DCU is dealing with. But let's just hope that Superman, if the stars all align, it could go above and beyond if things go well. But I do think there's some realistic caveats and just challenges one needs to bear in mind. Now, the $225 million budget, I don't know where that's coming from. I suppose it's like a source, but that I suppose matches up to what, James Gunn debunked. $225 million, in my mind, is much more of a believable thing. It's like, okay, with everything this movie is doing and what we know about it, okay, it's not like 180 million, but it's not like okay, it's a lot of money, but it's not crazy 300+ million Mission Impossible, Indiana Jones, and a Dial of Destiny type budget. It's 225. So, okay, that's, they're putting quite a bit into it. They kind of want a pretty damn good return, but it's not like ridiculous again, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, just throwing money. Let's keep throwing it. And like, I keep saying more money, more budget does not equal more box office. This is a believable number for Superman in my mind. And 225 with hopefully a $700+ million box office return is what I've got my fingers crossed for. Would be good. A good start for the DCU. Now, going back to test screenings, the next story, very briefly here, is that The Hollywood Reporter essentially came out and kind of validated a lot of those test screenings were taking place. It's just a situation of what I was kind of saying and how with test screenings, you're going to have some outlets who frame things more negatively, some who just say it how it is. But in today's world where we kind of all have a bit of a negativity bias, like inherently, it's like, let's click on that headline because it gets clicks. It piques curiosity. That is the case of what was happening. And The Hollywood Reporter in their newsletter here said, what's wrong? Good question, Lois. What is wrong with James Gunn's Superman is a question that bubbled up this week with reports of the movie losing and gaining a composer, losing and gaining an editor, and other sky is falling down town cry yells on social media. Here's what we know. The movie had 3 days of pickups, as per what I got into in my previous video, but no major reshoots. John Murphy started as the composer, providing the John Williams-inspired electric guitar riff, and David Fleming was brought in as an additional composer earlier on this year. Both of their music will be in the movie, as well as plenty of Williams tones. And then there have been a few test screenings. I'm no defender of Gunn, but none of this is unusual, says one source with knowledge of the inner workings of DC. It's part of honing the movie, any movie. And when I say that, I get called a bloody shill, but it's just like as objective as I can possibly be here. This is true for all the movies you see. There was potentially the last movie you saw a very different version of that before it went through the honing process and the perfecting process. Another person close to the production echoed the sentiment. Gunn absolutely tests. He absolutely tinkers. He's not one of those directors who can't take suggestions, this person says. Studio sources say that Gunn is due to deliver a final and locked movie next Friday, so that's this Friday. That's 5 weeks before its July 11th release date, and a sign of studio satisfaction. So I don't really want to drag out this one for too much longer. Basically, the test screening stuff was normal, reeling back on some of the jokes, tying up some of this, tying up some of that. Basically, everything I read out. If you've missed what I covered, check out my previous news roundup video because we go through basically every little nugget of information that came out about those test screenings. But continuing on the Superman road here of news, we got a new still of Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor in the Fortress of Solitude. Now, Future Boba here, very quickly, James Gunn's revealed brand new character posters for the Justice Gang. So we see Eddie Gathegi as Mr. Terrific here with his T-spheres super close up. And I'm kind of wondering if this is what's underneath his jacket. I think it is underneath because we can see that it's more of a t-shirt with his arm out there. Not really a t-shirt, but you get what I mean. And it's really cool seeing the T-spheres up close. And of course, we get a much better look at Guy Gardner with his Green Lantern ring there. Super up close. It's really cool seeing the Lantern ring in that much detail. And Hawkgirl. But of course, we also have Superman. We've seen this poster before. Krypto. And interestingly, Superman robot number 4, of whom I guess will be the standout Fortress robot and possibly the one that Superman is holding as it got obliterated by the Engineer and Ultraman. Now, there are other little extra details that I might cover in the next couple of days coming out from those Superman children books, in where we've learned about details from other characters such as the Lex Troopers are known as Raptors. Also, other little bonus details, as well as we've got that Superman prequel novel coming out, so I might do a little breakdown on that. But back to past Boba. Now, another story that has piqued the interest of a lot of people here and has brought up the conversation of DC Studios at Comic-Con is that Marvel Studios will not have a major Hall H panel at San Diego Comic-Con this year. Now, everyone after that came out at the end of May was kind of like, well, James Gunn, you know what you need to do? You need to take advantage of this moment. And we actually spoke about, I think one of my previous news roundups was literally DC Studios at Comic-Con or San Diego Comic-Con. And I spoke about how I did think, and I do think, it would be a missed opportunity if Gunn doesn't talk about anything other than Peacemaker there. Now, I'm not saying DC Studios should have a major Hall H presence. No. But as per what I said before, I think you can absolutely show more than just Peacemaker. You can literally I don't see why you wouldn't have any, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow stuff to show. They could show some Lantern stuff. Now, also with regards to Comic-Con, James Gunn was asked towards the end of May, so will there be a special Peacemaker panel at San Diego Comic-Con, or will it be an all-encompassing DC Studios one? Gunn did say, it's just me and John and Peacemaker, though of course I'll talk about everything, but he corrected that afterwards saying, sorry folks, I was reading too fast and was thinking CCXP. I was responding about Mexico this week. So he doesn't really say anything about Comic-Con. I think this is something that is still very much so in flux in their minds, in where they're like, okay, so how do we handle this? Are we going to say more than a couple of things? I know Gunn said before that, Comic-Con this year wouldn't be a crazy thing that they're going to do. I just pulled the article up when the Hollywood Reporter spoke to Safran and Gunn a few months ago, and the Hollywood Reporter says right now, however, the focus is back on Superman. Gunn is returning to Atlanta this week to continue the post-production process on the movie, and while there aren't any major plans for DC Studios to be at San Diego Comic-Con, the division plans on making a splash at CinemaCon, as we've already been through that. So that's the kind of latest we have in all reality on Comic-Con. But that doesn't mean that they might not, it might not be a major splash, but there could still be stuff. Why, if you've got, after Superman is out at that point, why not shift the focus slightly? Not completely distracting from the recent release of Superman, but it's hey guys, here's a little bit about Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Not a teaser trailer, nothing like that. But here's also HBO's Lanterns. Here's another, maybe you could show a little entrance of Jon Stewart walking in, and then the camera cuts to Hal Jordan, Carl Chandler, just flexing the ring like this, and it lights up. 12 seconds of that would make people be like, nothing crazy. It's just, it whets the appetite. I think that their marketing should be screaming to James Gunn, look, again, you don't have to give us a lot, but we should be doing something like this. But ladies and gentlemen, that is everything from me today after another very rambly news roundup video. I hope you enjoyed my rambles. I need to hear your rambles now down in the comment section. I read every comment, believe it or not, so I will be down there talking to some of you. I would really appreciate it if you left a like on this video as well. It does go a long way to kind of push this video out there to more people. But other than that, just thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the DCU in the next video. Goodbye.